On tonight's CTV News, the Earthquake Recovery Minister is questioning whether the city's flooding problems are earthquake-related. A city bar owner is seeking $300,000 of ratepayers' money, and Timaru Port is set to benefit from a takeover. This is CTV News. I'm Grant Mangan. The latest budget is out, and Labour's leader didn't waste any time before calling it politics as usual, accusing National of fudging the numbers.
The books are back in black. Finance Minister Bill English has announced a $372 million surplus. The government's forking out an extra $100 million for the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority over the next 2 years. Earthquake Recovery Minister Jerry Brownlee says this will increase the government's Christchurch rebuild commitments to $15.4 billion from an estimated $40 billion total rebuild cost. Minister Brownlee says the government's paying $9 million a day in rebuild invoices. The budget's also allocating $14 million to the Canterbury Social Support Fund, and $75 million from the government's asset sales program will be spent on Canterbury housing development. Minister Brownlee says no resource has been spared in rebuilding Christchurch, with 90% of the horizontal infrastructure due to be complete by the end of the year. However, Labour leader David Cunliffe says Nationals delivered a fudget budget by massaging the books and cutting funding for the Canterbury local infrastructure rebuild to scrape into surplus. He says the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister have cut $567 million out of the government's contribution to local infrastructure in the Canterbury rebuild.
Minister Jerry Brownlee is questioning whether the flooding was caused by the earthquake, saying it's the council's responsibility.
Earthquake Recovery Minister Jerry Brownlee is requesting the addresses of the flood-damaged homes before it can be labelled as a result of the earthquakes. Jerry Brownlee told Radio New Zealand this morning the government is not responsible to fork out for the damage. Christchurch residents were hit hard by flooding 4 times already this year. The task force reported this was made worse by the uneven ground affected by the earthquakes. Brownlee questions the flooding damage as a result of the quakes, and believes repairs and restoration is the council's responsibility. The Earthquake Recovery Minister says when the Prime Minister visited in March, he offered to help the city in whatever way the government can. Brownlee says it's frustrating waiting to hear back from the City Council with what they need. We asked Christchurch residents what they think about the Minister's comments.
Before the earthquakes, when it rained, it didn't flood as much as what it has now, so yeah, I think a lot of it's got to do with the earthquakes.
The ground has sunk quite noticeably in several places, so I think that he should really take another look at it and get some help for those people with the flood-prone houses.
Common sense would suggest, though, that the earthquakes would have some impact on the flooding.
It's a load of hogwash, to tell you the truth. You know, when land sinks, it causes basins, doesn't it?
It's ridiculous. I just feel sorry for the families that their houses are getting flooded nearly every 2 weeks. It's ridiculous. They can't live in that and then expect to pay for it.
Everything about the earthquakes has affected everything. So I think it's got something to do. I mean, I don't know, but I think it does. I think most people in Christchurch would think it does.
It's a shame to see that people have to go through a holocaust again after an earthquake and then get it flicked over to, like it's someone else's problem. At the end of the day, it's all their problems.
I can't believe that he even said that. Maybe he should live over there. Maybe he should have a house there. I mean, those houses are filled with families that are suffering. And we all know, all of us know Christchurch, that it's because of the earthquakes. It wasn't there before.
He's got to be dreaming. That's what's caused it. I mean, the town has sunk half a metre, so it's only logical it's going to flood. So, yeah, I think he needs to go back to primary school.
Environment Canterbury has begun to tell 11,000 Christchurch property owners their land may be potentially contaminated with chemicals and hazardous substances.
Environment Canterbury have released information revealing that homes in Christchurch were built on potentially contaminated land. 11,000 properties are earmarked as having soil contaminated by chemicals or toxic substances, such as lead, arsenic and pesticides. The largest concentration of properties are found in northern Christchurch. Hazardous and contamination can be scary terms to hear when it comes to property, but Environment Canterbury's Investigation and Monitoring Director, Ken Taylor, says it's nothing to be worried about.
We're not talking about, drums of toxic chemicals buried in people's backyards. We're talking about the risk of traces of chemicals being left in places because of the way the land was used.
Since 2008, all regional councils have been identifying land where harmful activities have taken place. The chemicals remain in the soil for decades of years after. The government have been assessing the potential risks since the mid-2000s. It's only since the earthquakes that a majority are affected because of land damage and vulnerability to liquefaction. With thousands of repairs being completed on damaged homes and land shifted, it's vital Christchurch landowners are in the know. Living on contaminated land, the health risks are quite low. The real concern is around added stress on people already dealing with earthquake repairs. Ken Taylor reassures residents there are no health risks until the soil starts to be disturbed.
We know that there are lots and lots of different kinds of chemicals around that when they get in the environment can cause a whole range of things, starting with sort of minor skin irritations going through to more serious things. But certainly wouldn't want to overplay that, because usually when those things are in the soil, although they may stay there for a long time, if that soil's not disturbed, people aren't exposed to them.
The associated costs of testing and consent to remove soil on earthquake-affected properties is the responsibility of private insurers. The average cost of the investigation can be just under $5,000.
The costs of doing that soil testing will vary a lot between depending on the type of activity, the size of the property, a whole bunch of other things. The average price, we say, is probably around about $5,000, could be less. But for those people who will need to do the major land repairs, EQC and their private insurance company will take care of those sorts of things.
Hours have been spent trawling through old council records, files and maps, trying to identify what the land used to be. But the best way to explore the past is through aerial photography over 50 years old.
We have photographic records that go back to the 1940s, when the city was much smaller than it is now. And what we can do is we can compare these aerial photographs decade by decade to see the land change that's taken place.
In the newly developed housing area in Christchurch, contaminated land was found and treated before the building began.
Things were done right from the start, where before the subdivision even took place, they checked the soil for potential contamination. Why did they do that? Because this used to be an orchard, and on orchards there are pesticides and fungicides and herbicides and things used. So they would want to check those, check the soil, and they found in places concentrations that were higher than acceptable, so that they were treated, so that no building started before everything was properly managed.
Notice of the contaminated land will continue to be sent out to Christchurch landowners until the beginning of June. Joel Batista, CTV News.
11,000 homeowners potentially living on contaminated land could see their land values drop.
Another setback for property owners who could be living on toxic land. The value of those properties won't be reassessed, despite their land potentially being contaminated by chemicals or hazardous substances including lead, arsenic and pesticides. Environment Canterbury has begun alerting the 11,000 owners affected, where ECAN believe their land may have once hosted hazardous industries, including horticulture sites, service stations and sheep dips. The areas where properties are most affected include Belfast, Avonhead, Bishopdale and Redwood. A spokesperson for the Christchurch City Council says rating valuations were based on market conditions as of November 1st, 2013, not taking into account the new information on the land that has now come to light. A knockback for homeowners who are now living on potentially contaminated land. Some residents are concerned about the loss of value to their properties, as they will now become registered on the listed land use register, a list of land that's possibly contaminated by waste disposal from between 1965 to 1985. The investigation into contaminated land has been part of the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority's Hazardous Activities and Industries List project, providing land information for the Earthquake Commission's land repair process. ECAN says that 11,000 figure doesn't include the residential red zone, as they were one of the first areas investigated under the Hail project.
Coming up, community leaders are concerned the council is shifting costs from better off ratepayers to the city's most vulnerable.
In Good Shape, examining all aspects of healthcare, medicine, research, nutrition, fitness and beauty, with in-depth interviews from medical experts. It's all here on In Good Shape, Monday afternoon at 2, CTV.
Introducing My Freeview.
This fella doesn't just preserve your right to watch free digital TV. It fits your viewing around your life. Too busy putting out fires? Record at the touch of a button. Want to watch one channel and record another? You can. And if you need to nip away,
Hit pause, even a live show.
for a one-off payment, you can enjoy free view when it suits you, not someone else.
It's like having your own TV station at home without monthly fees or contracts. My Freeview. It's Kiwi for TV.
Come dine with Country Catering at the Kaipoi Golf Club Cafe. Enjoy our range of delicious $10 lunches, daily specials and other homemade goodies. Open to the public 7 days inside the Kaipoi Golf Club, north end of William Street, Kaipoi. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Yuck, look at all this moss and lichen. I'm not getting up there, not in these heels. Time to call Mossbuster.
Mossbuster is a no-bleach, non-abrasive, biodegradable solution that has over 35 years of proven results. You can buy Mossbuster online for less than half the cost of other well-known products and can be yours for less than $1 a litre. You just spray it on and let Mother Nature do the rest, or Mossbuster can do it for you. Check out our website or call the Mossbuster crew for a free quote. Mossbuster, 0800 88 1000.
Come on down to Ferrymead Golf. Care for a game of paintball? How about some swings on the old driving range? Or on our par 3 9-hole golf course? Test your skills on the mini golf course or have a go at the air gun shooting range. Then relax at the Wow Cafe with one of our super succulent Wow Burgers. Whether you want to perfect your swing or are looking for a fun family day out, come down to Ferrymead Golf, 50 Ferrymead Park Drive, right next to the Ferrymead Heritage Park.
Join us tonight at 6 for DW World News. Informative, lively, international news, breaking stories and global developments. DW News, weekdays at 6 p.m, right here on CTV.
A bar owner has requested more than $300,000 of public money go into extra security guards for Victoria Street.
Victoria Street residents say a request for taxpayers to fund extra bouncers for local bars is outrageous. Bar owner Brett Giddens made a submission to the council's draft annual plan, requesting for more than $62,400 of public money a year for 5 years. The aim is to reduce alcohol-related disturbances in the area and keep the neighbourhood happy. Giddens made the submission on behalf of the Canterbury branch of Hospitality New Zealand. He is also the co-owner of Revival and Tequila Mockingbird. He says with the increasing number of punters, for the past 6 weeks he has hired extra security to patrol Victoria Street. Police have seen an increase in call-outs on weekend nights after 1 a.m. in the Victoria Street area and say it's about how the intoxicated groups of people interact after they've left the bars. Dave Kelly of the Victoria Neighbourhood Association says the profitable businesses should pay out of their own pockets, as it's a responsibility that comes with the job. Marjorie Montai is the street runner for the Victoria Neighbourhood Association. She says asking the council to fork out for extra security is unacceptable and unreasonable.
As a taxpayer as well as a resident, I certainly don't support it. And the few people that we've been able to consult with between hearing about this and now don't support it either.
Montai says before the bars settled in, the Victoria Street area was a fantastic place to live. She says the high-density residential area just isn't the place to be having parties.
Victoria Street always had a number of licensed premises, many of which were open past 1 a.m., but they operated mainly as restaurants. not as places where people who do want to drink until 3 or 4 or 5 a.m. congregated.
Resident Richard Greenless is fed up with the ruckus partygoers. Before the earthquakes, Greenless says it was very quiet after 6 o'clock, and now it's an absolute zoo. Having to live with drunken, threatening behaviour, defecation on the front lawn, and vomit mess everywhere, the Victoria neighbourhood residents say it's not good enough.
They do things like ring the doorbells at 3 or 4 in the morning and then run away giggling. Things that aren't, they're not criminal behaviour, they're not even all that antisocial. They simply do not mix in a residential area.
Places legally allowed to serve alcohol in residential areas are required by law to close at 11 p.m. In the Victoria Street area, the residents are more than happy if bars closed at 1 a.m. This comes off the back of the provisional local alcohol policy the previous City Council implemented.
The local alcohol policy to us is very, very important, and I think that's the main issue, really.
Current Mayor Leanne Dalzell halted the policy earlier this year. The local alcohol policy has been through consultation and is now waiting for the council to give it a final review. Joelle Batista, CTV News.
The Christchurch City Council's draft annual plan threatens to cut funding to community groups, the ones who have been working hard to support locals in the community.
They are the glue that holds the community together, but now the pressure is on to fight for them to stay. The Christchurch City Council are threatening to cut funding to the Strengthening Communities Fund, despite demand being greater than ever before.
And I thought, this cannot happen. We need an increase, not a decrease. A lot of us over here, particularly in the east, our hours have increased since the earthquake. Even though we've lost people, the people that are here need us more than ever, not less.
The funding cuts are included in the Council's draft annual plan, and this week the Council are hearing submissions from the public. Included will be Betty Chapman on behalf of the community leaders.
They've employed extra people to help cope with the extra work, and those people may have to be sent down the road. They may be no longer required because there's not enough funding.
3 years on from the earthquake, Betty Chapman has locals crying in her office. One who was having to put her husband into care while their home undergoes EQC repairs. Another, a woman living alone, unable to wrap her head around the shift from EQC to insurers.
So we're still getting all these ongoing issues, even with the repairs of the people's homes in this area. It's ongoing, and it will be for another year or two, at least, maybe more.
Work has increased since the earthquakes, with the coordinator role increasing from part-time to a full-time position. Leaders working in the area believe the community and its leaders are already under-resourced and nearing breaking point.
I know so many people on antidepressants. I know so many community workers going under because they're under-resourced. So to look at a situation where we begin reducing resources into our community social infrastructure, I think the long-term effects could be very, very dire.
Last year, the council granted over $6 million to more than 800 community groups, but they're still in desperate need of more.
I think there's a very strong case to be said that particularly parts of the city, there should be a significant increase in funding rather than a reduction.
The community leaders are hoping the council will see the people as the anchor of the city. Emma Cropper, CTV News.
To keep the Christchurch AMI Stadium running past 2017, its trustees require a $2 million grant from the cash-strapped City Council. The request comes at the same time a City Councillor questions the financial viability of the stadium project.
Christchurch's AMI Stadium was only ever designed to be a short-term solution for the city's rugby. Built within 100 days for $35 million, its use was only planned for 3 to 5 years, when a brand new stadium would be built in its place. But those plans have been shelved. The government's delayed the $300 million project until the end of 2017. And following news of the Christchurch City Council's $540 million insurance shortfall, councillors are warning the project might not be completed until 2019, 8 years after the earthquake that closed the first AMI stadium. City Councillor and Finance Chairman Raf Manji has been warning the city of an approaching financial tsunami. He's not surprised by the delays.
I think it's just the reality of the situation.
But when the stadium finally does get built, how big is too big? In July 2012, the CCDU released its ambitious blueprint design for the city. This included a fully roofed, 35,000-seat rugby stadium. Will the new stadium realistically attract 35,000 people? Former Labour MP Jim Anderton heads the trust that owns the temporary stadium. After a fantastic first year, the trust has struggled to fill seats.
It was filled the other day for the Brumbies match, and it has been filled in the first year particularly, but last year there were a number of occasions when there were only 11,000, 12,000 people there for a stadium that holds about 18,000.
If this was the grand stadium first proposed, there would be 14,000 empty seats.
So the city has to weigh up whether having a stadium that will hold the kind of crowd you need for an A-grade test match once or twice a year is worth it.
Councillor Manji says there's no point investing in the Dream Stadium if it won't attract the crowds.
I don't think so. I think a 20,000, 25,000 seater maximum is all that we'll ever need. Yeah. There's no point having a huge stadium for one game a year.
The potential delay of development to 2019 means the Stadium Trust will need a $2 million grant from the council to keep running the stadium past 2017.
The stadium can continue for 5 to 10 years or even beyond that if it's essentially maintained properly. So we have to make plans for that now.
With the new grant, the Trust would purchase its seating instead of leasing it. This would save the Trust $500,000 a year in operating costs. It also gives the Christchurch City Council time to find the money to fund the new stadium.
Council has to find $500 million and say 250 million of that is the stadium. And that probably, from the public's point of view at the present time in Christchurch, my assessment is that that's a relatively low priority in terms of all the other things that have to be done.
The Christchurch City Council plans to meet with the Trust soon to discuss the stadium's financial situation. Marcus Gibbs, CTV News.
And still to come, the traffic and weather updates.
Take a multi-dimensional look at the unique facets of European culture, fashion, film, music, art, and everything in between. Euromax, every weekday at 8 a.m, right here on CTV.
Have you seen something you like? You can purchase a copy of CTV's own shows so you can watch them again and again. So give us a call on 3777 033 and order a copy today.
We all know the best thing you can do for your body is eat fresh foods in their natural state. The same applies to your skincare. Southern Skin provides a skincare range with fresh, locally sourced ingredients, plus natural preservatives and emulsifiers to produce the best nourishment for your skin to unleash your healthiest complexion. New Zealand olive and aloe skincare for young or old, men, women and children. There is a product in the Southern Skin range for you. southernskin.co.nz.
Ready to go, mate? Flight leaves at 4:30.
Relax, mate. We'll park at Airpark Canterbury.
Airpark Canterbury, privately owned and operated with a free 24/7 shuttle service. Call 0800 Airpark or book online at airparkcanterbury.co.nz.
This could be nothing. Europe in concert. A new, fantastic international artist performing every week. Saturday evening at 7 p.m, right here on CTV.
If you're driving around the central city, CTV's traffic update will assist you navigating the repairs taking place.
Hello travellers, to help you plan your journey around the central city, here's a few tips on how to avoid the jams this week. Work on Durham Street is continuing, with traffic down to just one lane from Kilmore Street to the south of St Asaph. Barbados Street now, and you know the deal, it's still slow during those busy times. You'd be best to avoid it. Fitzgerald Ave is your best route when travelling south. All lanes are open, and you can quickly move around the CBD. The work on Durham Street and Barbados Street will be in place until at least June. Take care out there. To keep up to date on what's happening with the Central City roads, stay tuned, keep watching CTV News first at 5, and in the meantime visit the Transport for Christchurch website.
And finally tonight, your regional weather.
Good evening, Canterbury. How's the weather in your region? Well, let's take a look. First up in Timaru, Temuka and Geraldine, 12 degrees. Next in Ashburton and Methven, 12. And over in Rakaia, 12 degrees today. And Darfield, slightly warmer on 12, and Ralston and Lincoln, 12 degrees. Lincoln hitting a mild 12 as well. A damp day in the Garden City, Christchurch hitting 12. And over in Akaroa, a brisk 12. Heading north to the Waimakariri, Rangiora and Kaiapoi hitting 12, and further north in Amberley 12 as well. Up the top in the Hurunui, not very warm today. Culverton and Hanmer Springs 13, Cheviot 13 degrees as well. Can't forget about Kaikoura, 12 degrees. But what about tomorrow? Timaru, a fine day ahead with light northeasterlies developing and pleasant temperatures after a cold start. Tonight's low 0, but tomorrow's high will be 14. In Ashburton, frosty at first but fine and sunny with pleasant afternoon temperatures. Tonight's low 0, tomorrow's going to hit a high of 14 degrees. And in the Garden City, Christchurch, plenty of sunshine to cheer your Friday up with light winds, 10 northeasterly during the afternoon. Tonight's low 0, tomorrow's high 14. Kaikoura, frosty in the morning but plenty afternoon temperatures with light northeasterly breezes. Tonight's low 0, tomorrow's high 14 degrees. And in other areas around the region, it's looking fine. Temuka and Geraldine, 14 degrees. Methven and Rakaia, high of 14, and a chilly night ahead with a low of -1. Darfield, Leeston and Ralston wrap up warm. It's hitting -1 overnight and a high of 14 during the day. Lincoln, fine for most parts of the day, your high of 14, a low of -1. Akaroa, 0 degrees is your low, but a high of 14. Rangiora, Kaiapoi and Amberley, 14 degrees, fine for most parts of the day and -1 overnight. Hanmer Springs, Culverton and Cheviot, you have the high of the region on 15, but you're not escaping the chilly night with a low of -1. Looking ahead for Canterbury, sunny periods and increasing high cloud on Saturday with moderate northerly northeasterly winds. Fresh gutsy northwesterlies on Sunday with high cloud and mild temperatures. Fine on Monday with some high cloud and long sunny periods, moderate northerly winds. Fresh mild northwesterlies and high cloud on Tuesday morning. A period of southwesterlies during the afternoon though, but weather remaining fine. Fine and sunny with high cloud increasing on Wednesday and moderate northeasterlies. And that's all for your Thursday's weather. Keep warm and have a lovely evening.
And that's CTV News for Thursday. I'm Grant Mangan. Good night.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.